The Linnean Society holds many archives from its fellows, and that from its foundation in 1788. One of these fellows was a Scottish surgeon named Alexander Anderson, who had a very eventful life. He took part in the American War of Revolutionary Wars. He was captured by privateers, and then he ended up in the Caribbean, where he visited the islands of Barbados, Grenada, St Lucie, and then he became superintendent of the St Vincent Botanical Garden in 1785, where he spent the rest of his life. And in the 25 years of his career, the garden grew from around 350 species to more than 3,000 by his death. And he drew up a catalogue of these plants and hired local and indigenous artists to paint for him the plants that were in his garden. And we have 147 watercolours depicting some of these plants. 11 of these are signed by a young artist who was named John Tyley.
John Tyley was a truly remarkable individual, and he gained recognition almost as soon as he arrived in St. Vincent. Alexander Anderson praised him for his talents, and William Bentinck, the colonial governor of St. Vincent in 1798, described him as the only individual of his artistic talents in all of St. Vincent, and perhaps even in all of the West Indies. This assessment of Tyley's extraordinary status still holds true today. We know of very few artists of African descent who worked in the colonial Caribbean, but because Tyley signed a number of his botanical illustrations, we not only know that he was an artist working in the colonial Caribbean, but also we can link him to a surviving and identifiable body of work. Now, the illustration that Tiley did of a breadfruit tree and a human figure is particularly fascinating. It also happens to commemorate an important moment in Caribbean history. In 1793, the breadfruit tree arrived in St. Vincent on a ship captained by William Bligh. Bligh's voyage was the culmination of a years-long effort by the British government to bring breadfruit from the Pacific to the Caribbean. Backers of the Breadfruit Project believed that breadfruit was a kind of miracle food that could end famine on Caribbean plantations and, by extension, end rebellions by enslaved individuals. In other words, breadfruit was conceived of as a kind of tool or support of the system of slavery, as something that would help to control its workers and make them better laborers. Interestingly, though, Tyley's painting of the breadfruit tree arguably subverts these ideas about breadfruit by including a human figure, most likely meant to represent an enslaved individual. For one, this individual is not laboring, he is resting in the shade of the breadfruit tree. Two, that he's in the illustration at all is highly unusual because the vast majority of 18th century botanical illustrations did not include human figures. The convention was to depict plants individually in isolation on the sheet of paper. By including a human figure then, Tyley was really breaking the rules of botanical illustration and engaging in a radical act of representation.
So there's some significance to the blue clothing that the enslaved African on this illustration's wearing. And there's a narrative of a young slave from St Vincent that it dates to the 1820s that talks about when he was a slave in the country, being given 6 yards of blue cloth called bamboo and 6 yards of brown, and this being standard clothing that was given to slaves to make their outfits out of. So this places this enslaved African directly as a St Vincent slave. So the illustration turned up on the market at exactly the right time for a project that we're running, Decolonizing Alexander Anderson's archives. And the project's highlighting the enslaved African and indigenous knowledge systems that basically went into keeping Anderson's garden going.
We were really excited when this painting signed by John Tyley came on the market, because we were in the middle of collaborating with various historians to undertake more research on John Tyley, and it fits with our current remit, A, because it fits within the Anderson collections and will join several other drawings by John Tyley, but also because it fits with our purpose and our commitment to decolonize our collections and to uncover all the artists that really helped various naturalists of the late 18th, early 19th century in their exploration and their understanding of the natural world around the world.